Ailments in Path of Exile are extremely dangerous, and there's a few ways to mitigate them, but the most common is using Ailment Avoid boots or the Purity of Elements aura. Now, unfortunately, I haven't quite figured out how to make a crafting guide on an aura. If I could, then I'd definitely be talking about how to make an aura of Forbidden Rite, because that sounds awesome. So instead, I'll be talking today about how you can make Ailment Avoid boots, either for use with the Storm Shroud unique jewel, or for use with any other setup, be it Ancestral Vision or just getting your Ailment Avoidance to 100%. Now personally, I most recently made these for my Poison Pathfinder, but you can use these boots on pretty much any build. Also, just to clarify, while I am going to be using an evasion base for this video, you can still roll Ailment Avoidance with your essences on either a Strength, Dexterity, or Intelligence base. It just so happens that most commonly players are crafting on suppression-capable bases, so Dexterity, Dexint, or Dex Strength. If you enjoy learning how to craft things in Path of Exile, then do be sure to get subscribed, leave a like while you're down there, and for now, let's get into talking more about how to select a base. The easiest thing to start with is a fractured item. This way, you get optimal suffixes with minimal effort. There's a couple different things you can go with depending on your budget. The cheapest option would be a fractured resistance roll, so fire res, cold res, or lightning res, and ideally you want a 48% tier 1. But again, depending on your budget, kind of depends on how much you spend on the base. Alternatively, maybe you want a chaos resistance roll with 35%. That's going to be a bit more expensive. Or you can go with chance to suppress spell damage, where tier 1 is 13 to 14%. This is also going to be expensive, but sometimes does end up being cheaper than the Chaos variant. For all of these, the ideal is item level 86, but it's quite unlikely to find a fractured item level 86 base, so you're probably going to settle for 84 or 85. 85 gives you a chance for T1 suppress, and 84 gives you tier 1 resistances. So depending on what you want on the item, kind of depends on what you roll here. Also, if you need tier 1 dexterity, I believe that is 85 for the Omni enjoyers out there. Now that you've selected your base, it's time to get into the crafting process, and this is pretty simple. You're going to either use Essence of Loathing or Essence of Torment. Deafening Essence of Loathing puts chance to avoid elemental ailments on boots. This is what you use for generic elemental ailment avoidance boots, i.e. if you're getting avoid on chest or from the tree, maybe you're even using Ancestral Vision. Torment, on the other hand, gives you chance to avoid being shocked. And this is what you use if you're wearing a Storm Shroud. Most of the time, players will either use the combination of belt or boots with chance to avoid being shocked, and then either a boot implicit or abyssal jewel modifier for the remaining up to 40%. With deafening essences, your boots can go all the way up to 100% chance to avoid being shocked, or 65% chance to avoid elemental ailments. You can get up to 67% chance to avoid elemental ailments, making it easy to cap with either the Ancestral Vision unique jewel, or by getting a 35% roll, or more accurately a 33% roll on your chest. And if you're using Storm Shroud instead, you can get over 100% chance to avoid being shocked just on your boots. So that's why these are popular. Let's get into a little crafting demonstration. So here I have a variety of boot bases, from some very simple and easy to get to more expensive options. Obviously, you'll want to quality these up, and you can technically scour it, but it's only going to go down to magic, so you might as well just eat the extra 0.005 or whatever chaos cost it is, get these to 20 quality right away. Next thing is, well, to begin crafting, and it's very, very simple. You just click on an essence like this, and click on the item. What you're rolling for is good suffixes. You don't care about the prefixes, you can always fix those later. In this case, we've got one good suffix, which is guaranteed by the fracture, a second good suffix, which is guaranteed by the essence, and a third garbage suffix. It had one job and it somehow failed. So we're just going to keep rolling until we see something actually useful in the suffixes. Because these essences can be quite expensive, you'll want to not be too greedy here. It's relatively easy to roll a single good suffix after the Ailment Avoidance or Shock Avoidance and the Fractured modifier. but it's certainly not guaranteed, and you can easily spend a couple divines on this step of a process. For example, cold resistance could be perfectly fine for me, so I'll just leave that there. And hey, it already has increased rarity of items found, though maybe that's not important. Alternatively, maybe I want Ailment Avoidance. Well, I'm just going to, again, roll for resistances. And I could say this is good enough, but realistically, because you're only filling out the suffixes here, you may actually want to go for tier 1. So let's be a little bit greedier with some of the other options. As you're rolling, try to keep a little bit of an eye on the prefixes. If you hit 30 move speed or high life, it could very well be worth keeping. Or for example, if you hit 10% chance to suppress spell damage, this is something worth considering. But I don't know your gear. I mean, there's a very big difference between something that's sellable and something that you personally want to wear. So this might not actually be good enough for you. Let's just try a few more times and see if we hit any tier 1 rolls, or maybe dexterity. Because if you're an Omni build, this is actually a really good example. All you have to do is come over here, go to your handy dandy crafting bench, put on, I don't know, move speed, chance to gain onslaught and kill, and there you go. You've got boots that are easily close enough to finished. You'll just throw on, let's just say a few ichors or embers. This way you get a little bit of extra elemental ailment avoidance, and I'm going to pretend that you're using Ancestral Vision to cap out, so you only need 50% here. This is what I would call the easy version of crafting the boots. So after re-rolling just a little bit more, here I have 60% chance to avoid being shocked, tier 1 lightning resistance, and the fractured suppress. But the prefixes are kinda garbage. So let's go about doing a little fun trick to change that. For this, you will need a Veiled Chaos Orb and a Wild Bristle Matron. The Wild Bristle Matron adds a random Metacraft modifier to a non-unique item. Right now, this pair of boots has one open prefix. The only Metacraft which is a prefix is suffixes can't be changed. Therefore, when you use a Wild Bristle Matron, it has 100% chance to apply the Metacraft. This is why it's slightly more cost efficient to use than instead just spending 2 divines to apply it via your bench. From here, we use a Veiled Chaos Orb. This will wipe out the prefixes, replacing them with a Veiled mod and some potential other random junk. If your prefixes are ever full, then don't worry, that's not a problem. You could always influence it with Exarch and use an Eldritch Annul. This will remove a prefix and leave your suffixes unchanged. Remember, the suffixes are what you invested in. They're what matters. Prefixes can really be whatever. And so now we want to ideally unveil movement speed, but unveiling life would also be a win. So we want to block something that we don't want, in this case, mana. Come on over here, unveil. And we got garbage. We do not want this mod. Hybrid life is never the answer, but movement speed, chance to avoid being chilled, or max life. We'll go for movement speed, chance to avoid being chilled. Now you come back here, you replace the craft like so. Maybe roll it until it's a high number. Admittedly, I probably should have just taken the 67 at the start, but let's get greedy. I mean, they're only alks and scours. 69, you know what? That's a nice number to stop on. Optionally, if you want, you can slam it. There's no real super game changer here, but it definitely doesn't hurt. We hit a little extra evasion. That's cool, I guess. And now you have very basic movement speed, shock avoid boots that could easily be your best in slot. This doesn't quite take you to 100% chance to avoid being shocked. For that, you're going to need ichors and embers, because boots also have implicits, and those are quite valuable. Now this is the part that gets painful, because your only real option is to spam until you get chance to avoid being shocked. This could be something that you hit in 1 Grand Eldritch Ember, or it could be something that you hit in a dozen. In this case, I hit it in 10, which is pretty darn good. The reason you need to use Grand is you must be able to roll 39 to 41% with a 60% roll to reach 100. If you had below a 59% roll, so 56, 57, 58, what you would do at this point is you would buy one of the highest tier of Ichor, then use an Orb of Conflict The Orb of Conflict would attempt to even them out, giving you a fairly good chance to raise the tier for chance to avoid being shocked by 1. And then simply repeat this process until you get Exceptional, which is how I made this pair of boots that I'm wearing. Now, I can't really tell you the best Ichor to roll, because that depends on your build. For example, if you're an Ignite build, you probably want Ignites deal damage faster. If you're a Poison build, you want Poison deals damage faster. And if you're a build that relies on trigger skills, you'll want cooldown recovery speed. Maybe you're an RF Jug and you want life regeneration rate. There's plenty of different options, and you really need to cater it to your build. So I'll leave that up to you. However, the good news about this crafting method is you are extremely likely to unveil either life or movement speed whenever you use a Veiled Chaos as a boot prefix. It's quite reliable to hit good suffixes on boots, usually within a couple divines of essences. And these boots are good enough that they'll be your best in slot. And if you want to know how to craft other items in Path of Exile, maybe check out how to craft a beginner bow for lightning arrow or poison bows. Or alternatively, if you want something a bit more high-end, check out my micro distillery belt crafting guide, which is how I made the belt I'm using in my current build. Links to both of those will be up in the card and down below. And if you want even more crafting tips, then check out some of Sushi's crafting guides over at MaxwellGG. With that said, a special thanks to my patrons and channel members for the continued support. Link to support is down below. And of course, always remember, even if you're just crafting for yourself, if the bases are cost efficient, it can often be better to buy a bunch of bases and sell the spares after you finish crafting them, than to potentially lose a lot of money because you got unlucky on one item. Variance on one item is very much a thing, and variance on 10 or 20 is a lot less of a thing. But most of the time, crafting is about following the right steps and having a big enough sample size to avoid random chance than it is about gambling. And so with that, thanks for watching, I hope you learned something, and I'll see you again sometime soon.